Let's see. Okay, we're live. Thank you very much, guys, for being here today. Let me see. Let me start off with doing a little bit of housekeeping and acknowledge some of the people that are already here with us. Because once I get going, I'm usually not the best of going back and checking out the chat. I get distracted too easily when I do that. But I want to start off by saying thank you to Linda Wirtz for being the first one in here. Price tag Joe, thanks for dropping in. Though he cannot watch the live, he dropped in, left his like, and watched the replay. Jody P, thank you for coming in. Audra Myers, thank you for being here. Uncle Smiley, thanks for joining us today. Empire of Dirt Aquatics, Jeff, thank you so much, sir. And that's it for right now. I know they'll start trickling in here. They always do. You know what I didn't do? I didn't check the schedule. I don't know who's going live today, but you know, it is what it is. Usually I do a lot of these with the expectation that people will be watching the replay. We had a couple of people come in. I would Yo is here, Flatbed Aquatics and Outside In. Kyle, thanks for dropping in. As you guys can see today, I'm joined by Paul from This Way to the Aquarium. I don't know how many of you guys have had an opportunity to check out his channel. I've been watching it for probably like the last 3 or 4 months is when it kind of hit my algorithm that his video started popping up. But if you haven't had an opportunity, I recommend you go check it out. If somebody could do me the favor of dropping the link, I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'll try to pin it to the top of the chat for anybody that's interested in checking it out. Just one more fish. Jesse, thank you for coming in. So with that being said, Paul, I want to thank you very much for accepting the invitation and being able to come on and spend a little bit of time with me.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. Yeah, we connected through Instagram first, and then started chatting via email and then text. So it's been great to connect with you.
Yeah, if I was looking at your channel, you've been on YouTube for quite a while, but I think it's like me, you were more of a consumer, and recently you started uploading videos to your channel.
Yeah, I think the aquarium one I've been on, I want to say at least a couple of years in terms of producing content. So yeah, I've been on YouTube for quite some time. You know, like you said, as a consumer, and then finally decided, hey, let me start. So I actually got a real estate channel. I'm a part-time real estate agent here, and then I also started off with the garden channel. Actually, my channel, it started off as, I called it Aquariums and Gardens. So I was doing both, trying to do both, which the YouTube algorithm didn't really like. So nobody was really interested. So then I was like, let me split these off. And then I split it off. And then, just in doing it, I just enjoyed doing the videos more for the aquarium knowledge rather than the gardening, which I still do the gardening on, when I do gardening, but the videos were a little more challenging. You're doing it outdoors. Winter times, you really can't do much with the gardening, obviously, since we're here in Ohio. So this year was pretty rough in the winter too. So it's not like I want to stand outside when it's 20 degrees outside and snow on the ground. But so yeah, and I just really kicked it off with the aquarium stuff, and kind of went from there, just enjoying sharing and connecting with other people.
I was going to ask you, since you're into the gardening side, have you tried to incorporate that with your aquariums? It seems like it's trending lately, where you start having a lot of people putting the immersed stuff coming out of the aquariums. Is that something that you've kind of looked into doing, especially with your background in gardening?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at there's a hydroponics, actually, aquaponics field, where basically some people they'll do double. They'll have the fish. Sometimes the fish is actually livestock for them, so they're raising those fish up for food. But then also, the whole nitrogen cycle, the nitrates benefit plants, so they'll be putting in plants in there that root. The roots go underwater. They absorb the nutrients from the water there, and then whatever the produce is, with lettuce, herbs, and whatnot, then they're growing that there, and they're consuming that as well too. So I looked into that, but not that's interesting. I mean, the thing I do always talk about too when I'm doing my water changes is my water always goes into my garden, because of all those nutrients in there. Some of the bacteria and stuff in there might have some benefit over time. So that's one of the things, especially all the when you're pulling out, algae and mulm and stuff like that too, that instantly goes into the garden. Just adds to the biological material in the garden.
Now, also, I guess what makes it so challenging if you're trying to do actual aquaponics is that it has to be done in very large scale, right? It's just the the containers that you have to set up seem to be a lot bigger from what I've seen on the internet. But I don't know if that's the case. I've never really um, dove too much into it, other than just kind of curiously glanced over and kind of understood what was going on with that.
They've got actually some smaller aquaponic setups. I've seen some for where you just have a betta fish in there, and then
Oh, okay.
you have a little growing medium on top. And with that, that's mostly like an herb kit. So you're just growing herbs. Herbs are probably the easiest ones to do with hydroponics. And then just as you feed your betta, and then maintain your aquarium, it helps. Like we know with plants, helps keep the nitrates down in the aquarium.
Now, when they're doing that, I'm assuming they're not using any sort of water conditioners or anything like that because it could affect the produce, or it has no
I think
side effects. If
with the dechlorinators, I think you're fine. I don't think you'll have an issue with that. And I know with there's even with the hydroponics, I'm not by no means an expert on the hydroponics, so I can't talk a lot about it. But
oh, okay,
it does. There is a bacteria. There's bacteria everywhere, so I mean you get that bacteria in there too. And I know with some of the nutrients in there, the hydroponic nutrients you buy, I think some of them come with some bacteria just to kind of enhance the root growth and allow them to
Mm.
grow a little better. I know on the soil gardening side, they sell a lot of fungal additives too. So you get these like powdered fungal, and you just drop it into the roots before you plant something in there, and that kind of helps the plant itself absorb nutrients. They form kind of a symbiotic relationship between the fungus and the plant roots, and the fungus takes in food, and whatever it produces as waste product, the plant eats that as for its nutrients.
Oh, okay. And now, have you ever played with the idea of putting houseplants in your aquariums? You
Actually,
know,
I
like
just started doing that too. That one, you've got a picture of my aquarium over there. So I've got it's called a Monstera plant, or the Swiss cheese plant. So that you can kind of see it at the top over there, trying to right over there. So with that one, it's a strictly out of water plant, but the roots do fine it underwater. So I've been doing that, and then the pothos I've got as well too. That I see you've got some pothos there too.
yeah, that's seems to be the thing that grows the best in here.
Yeah.
I have the biggest issue I have to fight with is heat.
Okay.
During the winter, a lot of my plants that I've tried growing out of, immersed like that with like house plants. I know last 2 winters ago, I had what is it? Ivory? No. Ah, it's the one that has the white petal with the stem in the middle. It's very common. Oh, wow. Anyways, I'm drawing a blank right now. And that did fine during the entire winter. Once we started hitting around April, May, where we're consistently staying, in the mid to upper 90s, it was too dry, too hot.
Okay.
Um, and it just started burning all the leaves on it.
Okay.
And it yeah, peace lily. There you go. Thank you, Jody. She read my mind. It was really nice. It was thriving. I was really interested to see because I had hung it off the corner of a 20-gallon long, so it's a little bit lower. And the roots obviously started changing. They went from the real skinny roots that you would have in the dirt to like these really coarse, long roots, and they actually grew all the way into the substrate. So they were
Okay.
tapping into the substrate of that aquarium, and it was pretty cool. After a while, it was kind of almost just suspending itself. And the little wire ties that I had used to kind of hold it in place had just because they were little thin wire had
Yeah.
rotted out, and then I thought it was going to fall over, and it stayed. But it didn't like the summer. It was too dry
Okay.
for it out here. So,
Yeah.
but
My aquarium's a
both
little.
those, I guess they like to be tortured, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty sturdy. And I was planning on buying one, but my daughter got it as a gift for her birthday. So it's just been sitting growing in our kitchen there. So every now and then I'll just go take a snip off of it and go drop it in a tank, and it's great at sucking up the nutrients on these in these tanks.
Yeah. What I started playing around because I don't know much about. I like plants. I love the look of plants. If you can tell, my aquariums have them. But I started finding more interest in the house plants, but I don't know which ones will convert over or not. So the last one I have, I think it's this one right here. It's I want to say it's like a water Asian something. I don't know the names of it, but it's doing pretty good. Test trying it in that little container to see what it does because I don't want to put it in an aquarium and if it dies off, then it'll follow up my water. But
Yeah.
it seems to. I'm seeing new growth on it, so I'm thinking I'm going to be able to eventually transfer it over to one of them. But I like it because it's like a little thick leaf on it, and you know, it's just I got to pull off the ones that are dying already. But yeah, that's I just recently started finding out which plants will hold up, and from just a little research I've done, I guess most of them you can propagate them, but they can't be long term. I guess in water. Eventually, you got to put them in soil, or they won't make it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I put that Monstera, that Swiss cheese plant. So that's you can use it in water. And so when I purchased it originally, I just bought it from somebody local. He gave me a couple cuttings off of it for a couple bucks. So I went to his house and grabbed it. So there, just soaked it in water. The roots started growing out, and then so I separated one. So the one that I put the 75-gallon up here, that's been in the tank for a while. And then I've got another one that I put in some soil just to kind of get that growing in there too, as having another source for plants down the line. So that's the one that's should be starting to grow tall. I mean, with the 75-gallon, I haven't been feeding it. I just finally put in fish in there about a week or two ago. So I really didn't put any nutrients in there. I would just letting the water in there, letting everything cycle, and then now starting to stock it up.
Hmm. Excuse me. And I know you were saying that you've actually kept aquariums for a while and stuff like that. What was the motivation to start up a channel and say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start sharing some of my knowledge. What led up to that event?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, interesting question, and I just I'm active on social media in terms of like sharing knowledge, and as I mentioned, I'm a part-time real estate agent, so I've started with that. I've been blogging for a number of years and got probably 100 plus blog articles, and I was like starting to explore the YouTube side. And so then, I started doing, originally I was doing actually podcasts. So I was doing podcasts with local lenders, local home inspectors. And then I was like, okay, next logical step from there is let's go do actual video. So then I tried I'd done a couple of videos for my real estate website and was doing a bunch of videos for the aquarium stuff too. And it just, kind of caught on. It's fun. I'm kind of a techie as well too. So the big thing is, with doing these videos, you got all this tech, you got these cameras, you got the computer involved, you got the software involved. And so for me, it's fun to tinker, and that kind of, spun off from that as well too.
So if you had to describe your channel, how would you describe it?
The aquarium channel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more of I'm trying to share my knowledge, and I'm also probably call it a cheapskate or a DIYer, try and do things as cost effective as possible. And these can get pretty expensive hobbies. So I like sharing my tips and tricks that, hey, this is an easy way to, one of the bigger videos that I have is I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Aqurium lids.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty painful. They have this plastic strip that slides on the back. They're pretty painful to put on. I've cut my hands on them, and so then I just, in the process of using I've got a heat gun, and I created a video for that, and that actually did pretty well too. So there's a heat gun involved, but I told people, hey, use a hair dryer. That's generated a lot of comments like, hey, this is a great idea. Thanks for sharing. It's like, because when I looked for that initially, I didn't find anything like that. I was like, okay, here's something I can share. So I just like to share the tips and tricks, and hopefully other people can find it too and use it for their own benefit.
Yeah, and that's to make the plastic more pliable and allow the glass to slide in. Is that what?
Yeah.
Mm.
Because
Would soap and water work?
I'm sorry.
Would soap and water work on that or something like that?
Possible too, but the way they do it on some of the ones I've seen, it's actually pretty easy to slide. I don't know what is some of the smaller tanks. Some of the larger ones, like on my 40 gallons, it's just you can't slide it in vertically like this. So you have to basically slide it down the long way. And so
Oh,
it just takes a long time to do it, and I've done it in the past where I was just doing it manually, and you're getting a good workout out of it. And if you're not wearing gloves, you're going to get cut up. But then I figured, okay, let me try with this heat gun over here, and then the heat gun certainly made it quicker.
yeah, because I know when I started watching your videos, you do a lot of what I would consider like uh tutorials, or not necessarily tutorials, but it's more like teaching people how to do this, how to do that. It's
How to's, yeah.
almost like for beginners, that are coming in and they're looking for information. It seems like that's what that's sort of the audience that you cater to, which is really interesting because I'll watch a lot of that content just because even though I might know how to do certain things, I'm always surprised that it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way, or I never looked at it from that point of view. So you always learn a new perspective on how to do things, especially because I'm just curious by nature. I'm always trying to see, okay, well, this works. What about if I do it like this? Or especially when people say, oh, you can't do that. It's like, well, hold my beer. Let's see.
Yeah, that's
and and try to figure it out. But I feel like I can do that now a little bit more just because I have a pretty good grasp on the basics of of fish keeping, that if I know something is going wrong, or it's not coming out the way it's supposed to, I can stop, rectify what the problem is, and make sure that the fish are okay. But I really do, I watch them. You had a couple that were about lights. You done some like species spotlights and stuff like that, right?
yeah, yep.
Now, as far as do with your channels related, I know that you've got multiple. Are you trying to decide on just one of these and focus on that, or do you go to certain periods? Because I know there was a little gap. I know when I came across you, you were almost posting like every week, and then all of a sudden it was like you were gone for a little bit, and I was thinking, oh, I wonder if he's coming back. And then like a few days ago, I think I saw your most recent post, but it's been almost like a month since in between. Is that
Yeah.
because you're taking time to do stuff for the other channels too, or what?
So actually, I've started up a number of channels too. That's one of my problems too. Is I sometimes bite off more than I can chew. So I started a number of channels. I had the gardening channel, and then I was doing some of these other investment real estate channels. And it's it takes a lot of effort to do. So I just kind of said, okay, forget those other channels. I mean, the garden channel is over there. I don't even look at it these days because it's an extra video to make. So the only ones I focus on right now are the aquarium and my real estate channel. And then I'm also, I work full time too in a different field. So with that, it's just, sometimes I have good, the ideas there, and other times it's just, if the kids are around, the family, everybody's home, just getting time to, set up everything and take a video and then edit it. It takes some effort and time. So I do kind of fall behind the schedule, even though they say you should, have it properly, schedule it regularly once a week, whatnot, because that's what the algorithm likes. But unfortunately, that's easier said than done.
What's interesting, Dan, I don't know. I know you were saying like in the plant community when you first started up your channel, you were trying to incorporate both of them into one channel. I know with us in the fish community, we're not we're a lot more flexible. And I think and what I mean by that is like I know if you were to post stuff that had to do with gardening, even though it's your aquarium channel, I would still watch just because I think most of us, especially if somebody's keeping like planet aquariums, that's like the obvious transition is going to either house plants or doing something other related with plants. And I think a lot of it plays into the fact too that the climate, because during the summer you can be outside playing around with that, but in the winter it just becomes one of those things where it's like, well, I can't do it outdoors, but I can bring it indoors and continue to do that. I think if you were to do to what you attempted to do by running it like a dual channel, now if you would once in a while incorporate stuff that in your aquarium channel, I'm sure it would do good, because I know several of the people at least in my chat, are also big into plants and anything that's related to gardening and stuff like that. And I've like I said, I've always been curious. I just I've never had success with with houseplants, and I think my biggest problem is that I was overwatering them,
Yeah, that's the
and I
problem.
didn't know that that was an issue until recently that I started watching some of the plant videos and how they make their. I thought you would just take potting soil and put the plant in that, and you should be golden, right? It's potting soil. Well, come to find out that retains too much water, and it'll rot your roots. Something that I was not aware of. So that understanding that, I started going, oh, that's why I was killing all my plants. I kept watering them every day, and the dirt just rotted out the plants, which is interesting because you can take that same plant, put it in just water, and it might thrive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess it's something about the soil that just either chokes out the roots, or I don't know. I don't know enough to understand it, but I just find it interesting that you can either do it all water or you can just do it dirt. And when you do it on dirt, it's take it easy on the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I got it, mentioned being the techie type part. So when I got into it and originally with YouTube and was doing the aquariums and gardens, like doing research and just watching these other channels, it's YouTube has this algorithm that they kind of like they they've got AI, they're analyzing our videos, they're looking at what we talk about. So then they break it out between audiences. Like particular audience, there's a very few people, large channel will probably get away with it easier having both aquariums and gardens and talking about it. But our small channels, it's like, they don't know, should they share your videos with just gardeners? But those gardeners don't care about aquariums, so they might say, I don't want to bother with this channel, versus or just share it with just aquarium people. But then they see a gardening video, they're gonna, the aquarium people who don't really care about the gardening video are just going to ignore that, and so that hurts your overall metrics.
Yeah.
So like I said, I have a tendency to overanalyze things, and then I dive into these, looking at the algorithms and stuff. Is like, okay, that's all. I'll just separate the channels, and then with the just being too busy and not having enough time, I said, okay, I'll just focus on the aquarium channel because I'm enjoying that. I do enjoy the gardening, but the setting up for that too. It's easy to set up a camera. You've got a fixed position here in the basement. The camera stays there all the time. But if you're going outside, you got to adjust the camera. You point it at the right places. And with a couple of my videos, people are saying, hey, you don't have it at a good angle. I can't see what you're doing. And so it's a little more challenging doing that compared
Mm.
to the aquarium side.
Well, and then you're fighting with glare because you're dealing with glass boxes, and so yeah, I could see that. I still haven't figured that out. If anybody watches any of my videos sees all this stuff on the
Yeah, it's the same
you
thing.
know, I I you know what it is. If I really cared, I guess I would take a little bit more of an effort, but um, I I just I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I should care. Maybe
Yeah,
I should. But no, I was gonna say because the reason I was even saying that is because one of the channels that I find the most fascinating right now, and obviously he started out as a completely just plants, and that's the Jungle Nook. I don't know if you're familiar with that channel.
no,
Uh, this guy's interior of his home looks like a jungle. I mean, he's got house plants everywhere, but in between the house plants, because he likes aquariums, he'll be showing his all his plants, and then all of a sudden you'll get an image of this aquarium in between all this foliage, and that's what I find. That's why I guess I find it so interesting because it's kind of like, well, now that I'm taking a little bit of interest in house plants, although I'm really late to the party because I guess the peak of that was during the pandemic. That's
yeah,
when I that's when I started seeing even people that were big aquarium channels all of a sudden started gravitating towards plants. And I
yeah,
didn't know how much money was involved in plants. I have a
yeah,
friend of mine who was telling me there was plants you could sell, in the hundreds of dollars. Uh, until Walmart got into the game and then destroyed the market, because they were able to put those same plants for like $20-$30. And so that kind of, I guess that was like it hit its peak, and then that was like what bursted the bubble on it. Because now you can find, I didn't know, now that I'm so late to it, I don't realize that these are like some exotic plants, but
yeah,
like Lowe's will have them. Uh, Home Depot, ours is a little bit different because our Lowe's is the one that has the bigger selection of indoor plants, and our Home Depot has more outdoor plants. Although lately they've been, I guess, because it's still kind of a big market, they've incorporated a little bit more of well, they've they cheated. They went like with succulents
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that. So, uh, but uh, but yeah, I even have a friend that has a fish store, and I guess he must have seen the writing on the wall because he said his whole business was houseplants, and then I guess he either caught wind of the fact that some of the big box stores were going to start selling these, so he sold his business. So he got out ahead and
Okay.
opened up a fish store. And I've done a couple of tours of that store because one of the things that I love about that store, the new one doesn't have as many plants, but the old store, you would walk in there and it was again like you were walking into the outdoors because he had all these beautiful tall plants, and there's just something about aquariums in between plants that just speaks to me. And so I used to love that store. I used to love going there. And then he was pretty smart about hanging all his hardscape in between. So he kind of incorporated the entire thing. But I think a lot of it is his wife, who has a really good eye for that stuff.
Okay.
And it was one of the neatest stores that I've ever seen. And but a lot of it was because they were still selling house plants, but they were more like stuff you could easily put in a terrarium because they do terrariums, paludariums, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Have you ever
And
seen the channel Serpa Design?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a one of also my when I get time, I'll watch his channel too. Just he's impressive in what he can do, and apparently he does everything himself too in terms of like the filming and editing. And he's got a huge channel too. I want to say like a million
Oh yeah.
subscribers.
Yeah, I remember when I started watching him, I don't even think he was over 10,000 subscribers. I
Yeah,
mean, but he was still big. I mean, he must have had like 3,000 or 5,000 when I started watching him, and to me that was like a big channel.
yeah,
Um, now that I look back on it, I was like, no, he was just starting, but
yeah,
it was so fascinating. One of the things that he's the epitome of what I've been telling people that I see the hobby kind of becoming, where for the longest time we've been broken up into niches. We're either aquarist or you're somebody that's into reptiles, or what do they call it? Herp keeping or
herpetology.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, herpetology, or you were a plant person. And even though I know at the core we all kind of gravitate to all of these, the channels would just be focused on that one specific thing. And I was talking to a friend of mine that I used to do a live stream with for Fish Plants y Mas, and I used to tell Steve, man, I telling you, this hobby is starting to trend in the direction where they're starting to incorporate. It's because it just makes sense that you could, if you like plants, you're probably going to like some sort of reptiles or amphibians that you can keep together.
yeah,
If you like aquariums, you're going to find plants that you could keep with those aquariums. If you like birds, well, obviously there's going to be plants that you want to keep around the birds. So it's like there's going to be eventually an expo where they're going to have all of these and bring everybody together, because I'd never understood why you would only have like a plant show or you only have like a reptile show. Like when example for us would have been like an aquashella, which was strictly just fish. And I was thinking somebody's got to figure this out. And last year was the first year that I actually saw one of the bigger expos that they do up in LA, who said, let's bring them all together, which made perfect sense because like you like aquariums, but if you went to an expo that had not only aquariums, but also houseplants, you're like, that's bonus.
yeah,
So for people that are like that have aquariums, because I know a lot of people in our community have aquariums and they'll have some sort of reptile or amphibians or, stuff like that. So it's like, why not? I mean, and it's not, people that do these hobbies are not singular, or very
yeah,
few are singular that just do strictly aquariums. I mean, you're going to do that. And I, I personally am not a big fan of reptiles, but I was fascinated and curious by the stuff that I saw there. And not even so much the reptiles. What really just blew my mind was like the insects. I
yeah,
didn't know that was such a big part. The colors, the type of insects, it is even more fascinating than the fish and the reptiles. You start getting to some of these beetles, some butterflies that mimic, other animals, and it's like, wow, it's just I really never knew that was something that interests me until I got exposed to it. So
yeah,
I think that's what I'm thinking. Like Aquashella right now, I see it really struggling. I think if they would grasp onto that and kind of took a page from that and kind of explored into it, it would revive that expo.
Yeah, I think
But
they do that in Europe. They've got like a yearly, like a pet show. I know Cichlid Brothers went there one time,
oh,
and
did they?
yeah, and they cover like all the, not just the fish, but they've got all the other different pets that they talk about there too, and show off all the new products and the new foods and whatnot.
Yeah, because I think for like the majority of us that are keeping aquariums, we're trying to replicate some sort of an ecosystem. So being able to expand outside the glass box just kind of, just kind of makes sense to a lot of us. I'm watching Ed's. He says he's really big into fish and birds. And I know I saw Jody P was talking about that she loves gardening. So yeah, it just makes perfect sense that you might start off just like in one of these hobbies, but eventually the more you learn about it, the more you start kind of, lingering, and I mean, exploring
Yeah,
the other
the overlap.
relatable, the
Yeah,
other relatable hobbies. But that's what I was saying. I think um, if you were like, I'm obviously not converted fully, but once in a while did something about that, something related to that, I'm sure that most of the people would probably watch.
yeah,
Well, that's like Serpa design. That's a prime example. And I want to say he started out as what, a reptile channel that then got into aquariums and then got into house plants, and now he does it all.
yeah, yeah. I
Now
think
he's
maybe,
doing ponds.
yeah, he's got everything. I mean, I love his vivariums, paludariums, and whatever he's building. He's got it's pretty, he's got his workshop there too. I mean, he's got like everything set up in there for his designs, and apparently he's doing it for professionally as well too, going out to different companies and whatnot, and setting these types of displays up for their, when their customers walk in, they have something nice to see.
Mm. Yeah, no, I remember I captured an image of his because I loved the look of the rack, but at first I thought it was aquariums, but it's, I guess, his reptile cages, and he's kind of sitting in front of it.
Yeah,
But the way he had it set up, I remember looking at that and going, "Man, that'd be great if I could had the skills to build something like that and make it my fish room."
yeah,
But I'm getting there eventually, slowly but surely.
yeah,
I'm learning. I learned how to do a lot more carpentry because of trying to build stands and stuff like that. Now I got to learn how to do some of the fine woodworking
yeah,
to be able to pull stuff like that off. So, but it's interesting how many different skills you pick up. Like you said, trying to DIY and trying to save money on stuff. Who would have thought I would have learned how to reseal a tank? That's something that I would have thought, oh, it's got to be really, really hard to do, or even build a tank.
yeah.
And once you start doing it, you realize it's not that difficult, just a little bit of a skill set and knowledge. And it's amazing what you can pull off.
Yeah, it's something I haven't tried yet is the seat resealing the tanks. I hear it, like you mentioned, it's easy to do, but something I haven't, especially when you have all that water involved, it's like I'm still kind of gun shy on that because hey, if I do it wrong, it goes bad, starts leaking everywhere, that's gonna be a big problem.
Yeah, the very first one I ever did is this one right here. And that's been up for about 8 years now, I think.
Okay.
So knock on wood, it's still holding up. And that was the very first one I ever did.
What size is it?
Then that's a 55.
Okay.
That's a 55. That's a 33 cube that I also did. And then somebody was giving me not a hard time, but they were kind of laughing because I was on a friend's live stream and I was resealing a 10-gallon. He goes, "What are you doing with it? Why are you doing a 10-gallon? They're only like $10." But it was just kind of, it's just busy work, really.
Yeah.
And it's like I've done multiple takes now that I've got it down now where I can do it pretty quick. And the hardest one is the first one. Once you get past that first one, they're all pretty easy. What I have to do and I wanted to do is actually build one by cutting my own glass, kind of like what Serpa did with the shelves.
Yeah.
I tried cutting glass the other day, but I haven't got that skill. I haven't developed yet. I was wasting more glass than I was able to cut straight.
Yeah, it's tricky. Then you shatter it, then that's
Have you-
one piece is gone.
Well, I think my biggest fear is when you go to, separate
Oh,
them because
snap
you
it.
score them. I'm one thing. The one thing that always gets me in trouble is that I think I didn't score it enough, and I'll try to go back and redo it, and I end up going to different direction and then,
Yeah.
ruining the original score. Uh, if I were to just trust, because I'm always waiting to hear the loud, scratchy noise that it does, and
Yeah.
to me, it always seems louder in videos than when I'm doing it, in person, and I'm going,
Mhm.
oh, that didn't go all the way through. So, and I try to go back and try to do it again, and no, I usually ended up getting it wrong. I'm pressing way too hard that to the point where it's kind of the ruler's moving my cutter or
Oh,
making
yeah.
it move off instead of just a smooth pass. And then the other part is trusting the fact that I scored it correctly and pressing down on it. That's the fear that I need to get over because I'm always envisioning going to snap it and shards just flying everywhere and cutting me up.
Yeah.
But I see everybody else do it as like nothing.
Yeah.
They just kind of just lean on it and it's like, oh, but it worked. I mean, you can get it done, and especially when they do like the thicker glass. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, are you serious? You just passed it over once, and that's going to be good enough, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and you're spending good amount of money on those too, so if you ruin one of your pieces, it's you're like, "Oh, yeah, that's why I don't wanna do it."
Yeah, I've been wanting to find some old windows, um, because you can practice on the
Yeah.
window pane glass. I know, like Home Depot, you can buy the little sheets. As a matter of fact, I was trying to make lids for my 10 gallons, and I had to cut them. But I think the problem is because my skills are not good enough, and I'm only really cutting off like 3/4 of an inch from that. It's a lot more difficult to cut less glass than it is to cut more, unless you really know what you're doing. And I think
Yeah.
that I'm at the point where obviously I don't know what I'm doing because I haven't had. I think it took me like 3 panels to make one top, and I was like, okay, now I I need to stop until I learn how to do this better. And so I came across some acrylic that my wife brought me from her work, and they're the right size that that's what I've been using for some of the tops on these 10 gallons.
Okay.
But you know, but yeah, I need that's a skill set that I definitely need to improve on.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some videos too where they're making these sliding glass, covers for the 10 gallons, and so I've got a couple 10 gallons. I've been curious about doing that, going buying those, but at the same time too, it's like if I shatter a couple glasses, it's like, might as well just go buy one of those ready-made Aqurium, lids.
Well, that's what I was trying to do. The ones they have the little plastic
Yeah.
what
Yep.
yeah, they you just slide one of them and then the top one yeah, that's exactly
Exactly.
what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I managed to get, like I said, out of 3 pieces that I tried, I got one the right with the right well, what was happening is I would always end up with the last 1/4 inch of it would not cut clean.
Yeah.
So it would have and I try to go back and figure out how to trim it or clip it or sand it down, and it was I was failing miserable. The first time I tried because I saw somebody take like some pliers with a towel and then just kind of force it over. Well, that took out the entire corner. So I was like, man. So I had to redo that one. And finally I said, you know what? It would have been cheaper to go buy cut glass because I can living close to the border. I haven't even asked the glass shop here how much they would charge me to cut it for me. It's probably not that expensive, but I just know that if I go into Mexico, I can get it done like $2 or $3.
Okay.
They'll cut them down a size. So it's like, yeah, I'll do it the next time I'm down there visiting or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Versus shattering a lot of sheets and then not getting what you really wanted.
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, I think the original lids for that one I had them done down there, and it wasn't that expensive. The only thing I was trying to figure out what kind of thickness of glass you use because I didn't know, what the thickness is. I think I used a 1/4 inch
Okay.
glass, and it works fine. I think that's what most of the 20 gallons or smaller really are is 1/4 inch glass anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, all right, I'll use that. It seems it holds water. It should hold itself up.
Yep.
So, what would be some of the future plans you have for your channel? What would you like to see happen for your channel?
I'm just slowly growing subscriber count there, and I know smaller channels, the monetization doesn't really get you that much money, but at least hit that point and see share with more. And like I was been thinking about doing live streaming too, and that's kind of a one of those things I see. Like your channel does a live streaming. Watch a few of the other fish channels do live streaming. So I think you get a little more interactivity. It's looking at the comments over here. You got a lot more comments coming through, so that's a little fun too. And just managing, figuring out how I want to do that. Right now I'm not even in my fish room here. I'm upstairs in a different room that I'm kind of working on as a studio for my real estate channel. But I'd also like to have a setup down in the basement over there where I can, like you're doing, just sitting live in front of your tanks and recording all that. But that's also the basement, so there's a furnace down there. So when that kicks in, that can kind of mess with the audio. So it's a bunch of considerations to look into, especially when doing live stream. I mean, when I'm recording, if the furnace kicks on, I can either shut it off for a little bit, but depending on the time of year, if you're in the mid of winter, you don't really want to shut it off. You want to let it run.
Yeah. Now, in your fish room, what kind of setup is it? Is it something? Are you focusing a lot in breeding, or is it just more like displays tanks, or?
Yeah, they're just display tanks, and just for me to watch. I do have actually two tanks right now. One tank is where the parents are. So they're a pair of Gelitochromis who are breeding. So they're breeding, and I had them in my display tank on the first floor of my house. And then I, took there was a Tanganyikan tank, so I took them all out because there was Lulupis in there. They were kind of predating the fry. So I moved them separately. I broke them out. So this one 40-gallon here, you can kind of see right behind me. So that's where the majority of the Tanganyikans went. But then there's a 20-gallon I moved up. And so the parents are there. And so they've been spitting out fry for quite a bit of time now. So I've been moving them as they kind of grow out. I moved them to a 40-gallon and been trying to sell them now too. We've got a fish auction coming up. It was actually supposed to be this weekend, but something happened to the facility, so they had to move it to the next month. So I'm hoping to sell a few off there at the auction. But these days, Tanganyikans aren't as in huge demand, so it's been a little more of a challenge trying to move these fry.
Have you tried selling online?
Yeah, I've looked at it too. And early on, when I initially tried, I was overpricing them, and then they were too small at the time too. I didn't want to sell them at that point in time. I was like, yeah, I'll probably sell them. And one person was interested, and I quoted them a higher price than they wanted to. And so after that, they obviously weren't interested. But that was my mistake. So, but I did sell a batch through our aquarium society. So they have a breeders award program, and said, okay, let me submit them there. And so gave 6 out, and then some family ended up buying them. And that's I forget what the price was too, but all that money, just when you're putting them in for auction for the breeders award, then it's going basically like a donation to the aquarium society.
Okay. So is that mostly what you have is Tanganyika species then?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think. The upstairs, the first floor tank, I converted that over to the Pseudotropheus solosi.
Okay.
So they're Malawi, and that's just a species only tank. And so with this 75-gallon over here, I've got I just purchased 6 Corridoras, so they're in there right now. And then the other 2 tanks. The 40-gallon, that's a Tanganyikan. Then there's a 40-gallon, grow out tank for the other Gelitochromis. And this one right here, get it right here. This one here, that's shell dwellers. What is it? I forget the exact name, but the common shell dwellers, the multifasciatus.
Oh, okay.
And then I got
that's what I have too.
Yeah, 2 shrimp tanks too. This one 40-gallon right here, that's a Blue Dream shrimp tank.
Oh, okay.
And then
they got a whole 40-gallon now.
Yeah, I was thinking of putting fish in there at the time too, but they've got a lot of little shrimplets in there too, so I'd have to be careful what fish I could put in there. Otherwise, they'll pretty quickly become snacks for the fish.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're trying to breed for profit, yeah, I probably wouldn't put anything in there. But I have shrimp in all my tanks. But I'm not, it's whatever makes it. It's survival of the fittest in my aquariums when it comes to the shrimp. And it's funny because the reason I have shrimp everywhere is because I was culling them, and I would throw the coals in like this one back here. I used to have some electric blue acaras, and I figured, all right, these guys are big enough; they'll probably eat the coals. Well, I guess the shrimp are a lot quicker than what I anticipated, and because there's a lot of hiding places, they started reproducing. Obviously, the numbers are not like in a shrimp only tank, but with starting out with maybe 2 or 3 of them, after a while, there's like I got like 20 of them in here,
Wow.
and they were starting to throw some pretty good colors on some of them. So like, but I didn't want to go through the deal of breaking everything apart and trying to pull the one good looking shrimp.
Yeah.
So I would just let it go. And but yeah, there's just in all my tanks, but I breed mostly live bears,
Okay.
so they're not gonna. I mean, they're gonna consume maybe some of the shrimplets, but there's enough shrimp in there that the colonies are thriving. There, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I might try that too then, just to get, especially the cleaning abilities. I like the cleaning abilities of the shrimp. They keep the algae down and kind of get those things that you're not able to vacuum up all the time.
Yeah, yeah, no, and the biggest thing for me is if you got to give them hiding places though, and I always used to hear Lucas Brett's talking about rock piles, so I said if it works for him, let me give it a try. And um, most of my aquariums, you'll notice that there's a few little rocks piled up somewhere in the corner, and it's worked out pretty good because it gives. I think what ends up happening, the shrimplets will stay within the close vicinity of that until they get big enough where the fish won't bother it. So and the ones that do get picked off is because they probably won't too bright to begin with. So. But yeah, no, I'm always surprised. As a matter of fact, I think I have a betta tank, a bowl that I'd set up, and I put some plants in there, and I guess I have some water lettuce.
Mhm.
Yeah, I put in there, and I must have not noticed that there was a shrimp in there, and I threw him in there because I knew I didn't have any shrimp in that bowl because I knew the betta would eat it. But now he's cohabitating with a blue shrimp, and I'm like, okay, well, as long as he stays out of the way of the betta, he'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
the shrimp are interesting. I mean, the 40-gallon one, that was the first one I started off with, and started off with, I think I bought them at auction, like, for a lot of 15. So now they've just kinda blown up, and they're, I don't know, too many to count, obviously, but they do pretty well in there. And the nice thing about the shrimp too is the best thing about them too is that, you leave them alone for a little while, they'll keep munching. They're not gonna starve or anything like that, like you'll run into it with your fish.
Yeah, no, it's the other reason that I like having those codes in my aquariums is because since I started actually building the courage to travel now, because at very first when I set up my fish room, I was always leery about leaving um, because I was thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And I noticed my wife was kind of getting upset because we quit traveling as much as we used to. I mean, we don't go like overseas or anything, but we would get away for like a 3-day weekend or something like that, and especially because our kids are scattered throughout the country. And we would just, hop on a flight or drive to go see one of the kids for, like an extended weekend. And I kept telling her, I was like, well, we can go, but we got to come back in 2 days because of the fish. And I don't know who I was watching. I want to say it was probably Father Fish who was talking about, the creating an ecosystem where the fish will feed themselves and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And and I noticed that I started paying a little bit more attention. Like the guppies will munch on the roots of the duckweed. If you don't feed them every day, they'll start nibbling at that. And so I said, oh, you know what? Maybe if I start introducing duckweed to all my tanks, I might be able to pull it off where I can, if I go away for a few days, nothing's going to happen. And prior to doing that, I would kind of play with it. And like Friday evening would be the last feeding that I would do. And I say, all right, if I come in on Saturday and I see, the tanks are in dire strait and everything's dying, then I can remedy it. And so I would start like a day and then I would feed the following day. And then I started noticing that I could stretch it out, how many days I could go without feeding, to the point where I said, all right, we're going to do a live test run. So we went away for like a 3-day weekend. I forget what it was for. We went to Vegas to go see my daughter, and I came back almost not surprised at the fact that everything was fine. But what did shock me was because I wasn't feeding. There wasn't that frenzy, and that frenzy wasn't picking up particles in the water column. So my tanks were like super crystal clear. And I was like, whoa, I haven't been able to pull this off in a long time. So that's when I started realizing, you know what? Let's see how long I can go without feeding these guys and see what happens. I just kind of been experimenting in my fish room. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do 4 days. I know 3 days is fine. I'm going to see what happens at day 4. And sure enough, day 4 comes around. Fish are fine. Nothing's going on. But I was still like, I'm going to go ahead and feed. And then the next time I would try a little bit longer, to the point where I was actually able to stretch it out like 6 days where I didn't feed at all. And I'm looking at these guys. I was like, all right, these guys are going to be fine. They're not going to cause me any problems. And that's when we took off to a trip to Mexico.
Okay.
And we had, I think we were away for like 12 or 14 days, almost 2 weeks. No, I think it was 2 weeks. And I came back. I was a little nervous because I hadn't done it, but I knew things. I trusted enough in the fact that things were going to be fine. Came back. That's the best tanks I've ever had. If you allow them to kind of, and I intentionally had put duckweed in all my tanks, and like this one back here where I have the Buenos Aires, they cleared it out.
Oh yeah.
That's why I don't have any duckweed in here, because I don't. If I accidentally entered, well, that's why I have guppy grass in there. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
I purposely put it in there, and I'm not feeding them because I want to see if they're going to eat it. Because I'm getting to the point where I'm being overrun by guppy grass, and I don't want to throw it away.
Yeah.
But if I can figure out somebody to eat that stuff, well, that's free food, and that's one less a ticket item that I don't have to pay for.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. That's what's, I forget which channel I was watching, but one of the channels also recommended just taking that out, drying it up, and then processing it, and then just using it as like little flakes, or sprinkle it on, and the fish love to eat it.
Yeah, yeah. Who did I see that was doing that? They were drying it out. I tried creating my own version of duckweed jello.
Oh yeah.
To try to feed the shrimp. And I've always talked about going back and revisiting this, because I was looking at Repashy, and Repashy, what makes it solidify is just it has gelatin.
Yeah.
Unflavored gelatin. So I said, my biggest problem was I didn't realize that when you liquefy the duckweed, how much water it releases.
Yeah.
And it threw off my portions. So when I went to add the jello, I for that much water that was in there, what I should have done was squeezed out as much of the moisture I could have, and with the jello that I had, it would have worked out. But I left it too runny, and it solidified, but not like like when you eat jello. I was expecting that consistency, and I didn't get it. I still put it in there because it was processed. The shrimp ate it, but I didn't like the fact that it just clouded the entire water column.
Yeah.
So that's that way. For me, it was a fail. But I always kind of play with the idea of going back, but I got to make sure I don't get the wrong protein shaker, because if I get my wives and do that, she's gonna bury me in the backyard somewhere.
She's gonna make you fish food.
Yeah, I'll be plant food. But yeah, no, I think now that I figured out what I should try is letting it dry out so that it loses all that moisture in there, and then blending it and adding it to the jello. See if that'll help out. What I don't know though is whether that jello, even though I get the right amount in it, is it going to hold the shape once it hits the water? Because I know it starts dissolving, but I don't know how quick.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I haven't looked at or played around with, because I know Repashy holds its form for quite a bit. So if I can get similar to that, then I'm going to be money. But it's just it's just stuff that you play around with, and you kind of go, oh, maybe if I try this, but you'll never know unless you try it.
Yeah,
there's going to be more fails though, but that's kind of for me. That's kind of the fun too, though.
Yeah. You mentioned you were culling earlier for your shrimp. What were you selecting for?
Color.
Okay.
because mine were throwing out some that were like lighter or you see, I always understood that shrimp, when they would cold back, they would cold back to like the brown color, their natural color. Mine go clear.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, mine go clear with a subtle hint of red or blue.
You use
I don't get the brown ones.
Neocaridina or the Caridina?
Yeah, neocaradinas.
Okay.
Yeah, they're neocaradinas because my water is way too hard to keep
The
the
Caridina.
caradinas
Yeah.
unless I want to play around with RO water, and
Yeah,
that's too much work.
yeah, exactly.
Although I could probably set up like a 2.5 and go. Well, you can't use distilled water either, though. That's bad for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because yeah, that's what they say. You use the RO and then you add back the minerals that
See
you
that?
need.
That's one step too many for me to
Yeah, when I heard of that about
try
the
it.
Caridinas, I was like, no, I'll just stick with the Neos.
Although you can't compare the colors of the caradinas. I mean,
That's true. Yeah.
there's just the variations, the different types that are out there. Uh, I this last fish swap that I went to, I guess there's some tiger something. They're caradinas, which is cool about them is you can keep them in tap water.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, but they were like, I think for a group of they were, oh yeah, they were $10 because for a group of 10, he had them at $60, and I was like, that's less guppies I'm going to be able to buy. Now I'll pass on these for today. So, but it's just, but I was interested because I said, okay, that could be my gateway shrimp into Caridina species.
Yeah. Yeah. It's expensive though. Yeah. We've got a local breeder who sells those, and when I was chatting with him, I was like, "You got any Neos?" He's like, "No," but apparently he has some of his Caradinas in the local tap water over here. But I don't know how well that would, how to keep up on that too. So it might be something to experiment in the future with.
Yeah, no, I know a guy that his name's Mike Coleman. He's up in the Phoenix area, and he's a shrimp breeder, and he says that the problem is you can keep the Caradinas in tap water for a while, but eventually they just start falling apart. Yeah,
Yeah.
tangerine tigers. That's exactly it, Jody. Man, Jody's on the money today. She can read my mind. And so it was it was really interesting. But I think he had even when I did the tour of his house, his fish room, even he had pointed those out, and that was probably like a year ago. So they're still holding their price. I think that's why most of those guys will breed the Caradinas because they'll retain their value.
Yeah.
Neos now, when I remember looking at Neos, you were paying like $8 a shrimp, and that had come down from like 12 or $15 a piece.
Okay.
Now you're lucky if you're getting like $2 for a shrimp.
Yeah.
At least in my area.
Yeah. Even here too. That's I bought 15 cherry red Neos, and I think it was like maybe, I don't know, $20 or so, $2-3 about per piece.
Yeah. So I just keep them because I think they're cool. It's just another species to keep in my aquariums. Once in a while, if somebody's looking for shrimp, I'll pull some out and basically sell them for like $1 a piece. But I'm not getting, my door's not getting knocked over because people are rushing to get them.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, once people figure out that they're pretty sturdy and they start reproducing, they don't need to buy anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I call them, I jokingly kid that they're the water cockroaches because you can't kill them.
I've heard that, roaches.
People would say that. I remember when I first got into them, I was a little bit hesitant and nervous because everybody made it sound like they were so delicate. There's been buckets where I go pulling out duckweed, and yeah, but at first I was pulling the duckweed and throwing it out until I forgot who I saw a video about that you had to be careful if you had shrimp in there because you get have hitchhikers. So I started putting them in buckets now, and I'll leave those buckets sit there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time until they start getting to the point where they're a nuisance, and I'll start scooping stuff out, and sure enough, there'll be shrimp in the bottom, and they're surviving. And I haven't, I don't do water changes in it. I don't feed it. I don't do nothing. And so that's why I know they're super resilient. if I see shrimp dying out in multiple numbers, that's an automatic sign that something's going terribly wrong in that aquarium. And if I don't take action immediately, it's going to kill everything in there. So they're kind of like the canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. How long have you been keeping fish for?
I started back when I was in Mexicali. I think now I'm close to 8 years that I've been full back on.
Okay.
Yeah, fully back on. I started out with the with the 20 gallon. I kept them as a kid, but I only kept them for like 3 years. Guarantee you I didn't learn anything. It's by the miracle of God that those fish survived because I did everything you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't do water changes because I didn't know that was a thing. I did tank cleanings because the water smelled.
Yeah.
So because it was in the living room, my mom would be like, "Hey, you need to take care of that, or I'm gonna throw it out." So it was pull everything out of there, scrub everything down, and then put everything back in there and throw the fish in there. Had no idea that the nitrogen cycle was a thing. There were some convicts. That's why when people say, what's the best beginner fish?" Convicts, because I didn't kill them, and those suckers reproduce. So if you want a beginner proof fish, convicts got my vote all the time, because I think at one point it was a 10-gallon meta tank
Oh yeah.
that I had with the slate bottom. And I never understood why that sucker was so heavy until later on when I came back that there were slate bottoms. So I remember I had the pair of convicts in there, and then I went back to the store and got an Oscar for a 10-gallon tank. And then I got some Pacus. I got like 3 Pacus. I had all of these in a 10-gallon tank. Obviously the Pacus and the Oscars didn't make it. I think the Oscar, because of the way I was keeping my aquariums, which is horrible. This is a good indication of how bad they were. They started getting hole in the head.
Oh,
and I didn't know that was what they were doing. I just noticed that they were having some lesions, and I didn't know what to do with them. I mean, it's information wasn't readily available like it is today.
yeah.
And so I didn't know until I had like those died, and then the Pacus got way too big for that aquarium, that I actually ended up taking them back to the store that I got them and said, "Hey, I can't keep these." That's where I finally came across, because I was talking to the store owner, and he led me to a book that he had. This was like a little hardbound book.
Mm-hmm.
There was something, the guide to keeping cichlids, or South American cichlids. I remember I automatically gravitated to it because on the cover it had a convict.
Okay.
I was like, "Oh, this is a fish. This is a book about my fish." And after learning that, I learned a little bit more, but there's still a lot of stuff I didn't understand. I was reading about the nitrogen cycle, and that was going over my head. I had no idea what they were talking about. But that's where I learned that you had to do water changes. So I was like, okay. But I wasn't using dechlorinator. That was the crazy thing. I was making all these water changes. Not once did I ever remember about buying dechlorinator. That was a new thing when I came back into the hobby. About 8 years ago, that was like the latest thing, is you had all these chemicals you had to add into your aquarium. And I was like, what? I didn't know about this stuff, like 30 years ago. So, but it's interesting to see the evolution of the hobby. And now I've gotten to the point where I was like, that's all snake oil. You don't need any of that stuff. I have a like a planter that I turn into a pond. And I've got some guppies out there. I've kept overwintered them out there. I wanted to see if they're going to survive or not, and they made it. I found out that I don't get cold enough to be able to kill them off. So now that I have a 150-gallon tub, that I think I'm gonna throw my fancy guppies, just the mud guppies that I sell, and throw them in there, and just don't have to worry about bringing them in the winter.
Okay.
And that one I was doing water changes straight out of the tap, and they were fine. 'Cause I wanted to see if I want to see if the chlorine levels that people talk about in their aquariums are really that high, and they're there. So I don't know. I guess either our water department uses very, very low levels of chlorine, or maybe it's just wife tails. I don't know. I've never done a water change and have my fish died either.
Okay.
Knock on wood, because now that I've said that, I'm old. But to prevent that, what I started doing, and especially in here in the fish room, I would buy those inline carbon blockers,
Yeah.
the
The filters. Yeah.
and I knew they took away chlorine. I was reading the other day, this is where the gardening side comes into. It's the same RV, because I was buying the RV activated carbon inline water filters. Well, in there, it tells you that it'll remove chlorine, but it's not meant for aquarium use. That's what it says on the thing. And I was curious. I was watching a garden channel, and the guy was talking about it's the same thing, just the labeling is different, and it's sold for garden for watering houseplants and removing chlorine. And I went into Amazon, looked for the brand, and that same filter says it removes chloramine or chloramines. And I was like, oh, so depending on where you buy it, I guess the activated carbon does the same thing. It's the same product. It's just how they advertise it or sell it to you.
Yeah.
That's out there. So after that, I think I saw Gabriel in here earlier, GNC Aquatics. So if you buy that RV inline filter, you're gonna be okay to do your water changes. And that's what I did it for a long time. It wasn't until maybe last year that we had a in-house water system put in. And you know how you get the big carbon blocker media, the resin stuff. When the guy was installing it, I said, "Hey, would it be too much trouble to put a spigot as soon as the city water comes in, goes through this one before it goes into the water softener system?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I could. As a matter of fact, I got 2 extra bibs. I'll do one after the carbon blocker, and then I'll do one after it goes through all the soft water processing." And at that moment, I said, "Oh, great. Yeah, go ahead and do that," because I was thinking I'm going to be able to use that water to have a caridina shrimp and a pistols, because it's going to put out soft water, but it has a bunch of salt in it. So it didn't work out. It didn't pan out the way I thought it was, but I still have that in there. I mean, if I wanted to play around with my tanks that I'm currently, just because I want to soften a little bit of water, but I could do that. But I mostly use the city water that just runs through the carbon blocker. What I did notice though, when the first year I was here, because I was using straight tap water, I had built up a lot of calcium around my aquariums.
Okay. Yeah. The hard water stains.
After I put the water softener, even though it's not the water that's going through the softening process, but it's going through the resin, it's removing enough of those minerals and stuff in the water that it started dissolving. I don't have that problem anymore. I don't get the hard water lines anymore in my aquariums, which I thought was super interesting. I was like, whoa. So that kind of went away, which is really nice.
Dissolving back into the water.
Yeah, because it doesn't have just those resin container does enough of that removal of that hardness that it cleared me of that problem. Because if you go back and watch some of my older videos, you'll see the hard line waters on all my aquariums.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't noticed it until the other day. I was watching one of my older videos. I was like, wait, it's gone. And that's how I realized that it was, I guess the water is soft enough now that it's kind of reabsorbing that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what, ever since I've done that, I don't have to mess with dechlorinators or anything like that. But I just wanted to see if it was true that you needed to dechlorinate your water. I guess our system doesn't. I hear of people saying that you can smell it coming out of the tap. So I don't know if that's something that the city does periodically to purge whatever's in there, but we don't seem to get that issue here.
What are your temperature lows in the wintertime?
Like 40.
Okay. Yeah, because we get below freezing over here. So I know they changed the formula too. And then certain times of the year you'll be able to smell the difference in the water because the formula has been changed just because the adjustment of the temperature.
Yeah, it'll get, and it's not even, it'll get down into the mid 40s. We go into like 38, but it's only for maybe hour and a half, 2 hours, right before sunrise
Okay.
is when it'll make that dip, and then that's when it usually feels so cold. It'll be like around, because I get off of work at uh at 6 in the morning. Yeah, and usually on the way in, when I'm coming in, I'll come in like at 5:30 or so, and that's when it'll tell you on your car danger of ice on the road,
Yeah.
because it's like 38 degrees, but it's for a very short period, so none of our water even gets, I guess, cold enough to even think about freezing. So we have very, very mild winters.
Yeah. Yeah. Ours get pretty cold. This past year was pretty snowy. Usually it's not as snowy, but we do get in the sometimes below. This year we did this season we did get below freezing a couple of days.
Yeah, I know. But it's crazy because I remember when I was a kid, and this is something my wife and I were talking about. I remember walking to school. My grandkids are here. I remember walking to school as a kid, and all the cars would have that frost, that ice that would be iced over. And that was like a normal occurrence every day. I get up early now, like I used to be when I was a kid, because I have to go to work, and I haven't seen that in years. I'm talking about years. And I remember it was like a normal thing when you were a kid, and it felt cold. And now I don't think I have any heavy jackets. Most of my jackets are like what you guys would call spring jackets, if anything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you wouldn't survive here with a spring jacket in the
oh,
winter.
no. Here is just like I could get away with it, like a Levi's jacket for the
Okay.
winter, and maybe a hoodie under there if it gets too windy. But yeah, we don't get very cold. I mean, we complain about being cold, but there's a reason why all the people from the north come down here and laugh at us, because they'll be walking around t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops, and we're all bundled up
Yeah. Yeah.
for them. But as soon as it starts getting like 80 degrees, they start scattering. They leave. It's like, it's hot in here. We're like, what are you talking about? It's perfect barbecue weather. But so I know we talked a little bit about what you got going on. Do you have any big plans coming up for your fish room or your channel? Anything that you're any upcoming projects?
I'm working on a 33 gallon. I've got a 33 gallon long I bought, just started on that. So I'm actually working on a video that'll cover that, basically how I set up my tanks. So I've started on that, started the video, started working on the tank. I was working on some other tanks as well too, so I haven't gotten around to it. Need to paint some lumber and then get it set up. So that'll kind of be the final of this phase one that I'm calling for my fish room, that'll be the last tank on that side. So after that, if I'm going to get any more tanks, they're going to have to be the larger tanks. I don't want to, the smaller ones, take a little more effort. So if I did get another one, I've got the room for it, but I'd be looking at like a, 100 plus one of the longer tanks just for a little larger fish. But right now it's just mainly once I get that 33 set up, and then I plan on moving, since the Gelitochromis, they stopped breeding. So I'm going to, once I get rid of the fry in that tank, sell them off, and I'll set up another Tanganyikan tank over there, maybe a mixed tank, Tanganyikan and Malawi's. Just kind of build it out. I've got some ideas in my head on how I want to build the rockscape there, because some of the Tanganyikans I have there, they like the rocks. So I'll set that up in next couple of months. Though it's going to be a slow. I move slowly too, just because I'm doing multiple things, and the main thing is just keeping on top of like water changes and keeping on cleaning of the tanks, keeping the health of the fish clean.
Yeah. No, I for a while there was thinking about doing, because I have the shellies. The problem is that I was thinking, I can do something with shellies and another tank mate, but unless you get like a super tall tank, you're not going to be able to do it, because these guys are super aggressive and possessive, and I was like, but I kind of toyed with the idea of doing some other. I like the Gelitochromis. I like them. Was it Millerii or Marlii?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it though.
Yeah, those are the ones that I really like. You have the ones that are like yellow, right?
Yeah, mine are
Yellow
Mark
and black.
Smithii, so I think it's some of them have like the yellow and black striping all the way down. I think mine stops like midway of the body.
Yeah, and then I've always liked the Brashardis, but the problem is they're like convicts. They're the Tanganyika convicts. So they breed, and then nobody wants them either. That's the whole thing. and they look beautiful. I like them, but it's like I would have to get 2 males. I wouldn't want to get like a female because then they quickly overrun you.
Yeah.
And the problem is again, like you said, nobody wants them. You know, and I they're Marluri. There you go. Thanks, Kyle. And so that's why I was kind of like, oh well, and those seem to do pretty well with other fish too. So, and the ones that I really like, was it Cypricomus? The ones
Yeah.
that they call the sardine,
Yeah, I
the
used
one
to
that
have
has
some.
like the purple tail.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
those
used
are
to have
really
some in
nice.
my Tanganyikan tank, but the problem is they're pretty sensitive, so they kinda on their own, they just started. I bought 8 originally, and then on their own, they just, no reason at all. They're pretty skittish too. So the last one I had was in this one of these lower tanks too, and, as I would come close, it would kinda get a little too darty, and I think at one time it just crashed into a rock and killed itself, but so I
But and they're not cheap either. So skittish and expensive is not not very
yeah,
good. Trophies, yeah, trophies. I like some of the trophies. The ones that I really love, but I hate the fact that they don't look like that. I wish the ones they look like a starry night when they're juveniles, and then they grow up and they become like black body with a like a yellowish. Was it the Boise or the boy I forget what they're called, and but when I love them when they're juveniles, I don't like the way they look once they get full grown. And but with those, you gotta have constant algae on your rocks. So
yeah, yeah, I bought one, because I'm trying to avoid the breeding situation, so
Boise.
I bought a Tropheus too that came in with my Corridoras. So he's going to go into my tank once I convert that 40-gallon over. He'll go into there with the Gelitochromis, and then I'll see what other fish I'm adding there, the Tanganyikans.
And with those, you really can't do community tanks either. They're like species only, right? Because they're kind of aggressive with other fish.
Well, I think the trophy is from what I heard. Most of the fish, a lot of the Tanganyikans, even like I've got Lulupis too. They're pretty aggressive with each other. So if you've got like one Lulupi in there and then one Mark Smithi, one Gelitochromis, they should be fine with each other. But when it's the same fish in there, they can go after them pretty hard.
Mm. Yeah, there's some. I think they're like maroon colored Tropheus. I don't know the name of them, but they're beautiful. I saw those. I was like, whoa, those are really really nice. But I thought I had seen some where you really couldn't keep them with other species, that they had to kind of be species only because they tend to be pretty aggressive towards other fish. But I don't know. I I'm more of a community fish keeper. You know, I like
Yeah.
multiple species in one tank. That a
Yep.
lot of that's the only reason why I don't dive into those fish is because lack of knowledge, and because I hear, I don't know if it's bad information, but I don't, I hear it up once and then I go, oh, okay, I don't want to mess with that yet. I
Yeah.
think, but like everything else, is just the longer you're in the hobby, eventually you go out and to try something. It's like for the longest time, I kept saying I don't want to do African cichlids. I don't want to do African cichlids, and now I'm really, really looking at probably doing like some peacocks, and I'm saying just like OB peacocks, but who knows? I
Yeah.
don't know. I've started to see a lot more color variants that is like, that's nice. That's nice. But I that's another fish that is kind of like, I know what I'm going to get into. It's going to be a bunch of drama. It's going to be a lot of money because these suckers are not cheap and they're going to just tear each other up. So
Yeah.
everything could be fine one day, and then one of them goes on a murdering spree and kills the entire tank. So, and that's been the biggest reason why I have stayed away from them. But they're very good looking fish,
Yeah.
and it's
I was
gotten to a
looking at
point now where I said,
I was
I
looking
think
at
I'll try it.
the gold ocellatus too, which is another shell dweller too. But then after
Oh,
seeing
those guys
videos,
are mean. They
yeah,
have
they're
like little fangs in them, and they'll bite
exactly.
you too.
After that, I was like, nah, I'll just stick with the multis.
Little vampire fish.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. And it's crazy because if you're not paying attention, you stick your hand in there, they'll come up to you. It's not like they'll run away from your hand. So it's like, nah,
Even my
don't need
pseudotropheus,
that.
they don't have any teeth, but if I stick my finger in there, they'll come looking to thinking that's food, and they'll start biting on you, nipping on you.
Now, I know you mentioned you're on Instagram. Are you on any of the other social media platforms? If people are interested in following you or, getting a hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I do also have a, I guess it's Twitter now X account. On Facebook, I don't have my fish account over there. I've been meaning to set one up, but yeah, mainly Twitter, X, Instagram, and then YouTube, obviously.
All right. Well, again, I just wanted to thank you so much, Paul, for taking time out of your day to join me today. I really appreciate you doing that. And again, everybody that comes in and watches this stuff, I really, really appreciate you guys. Because without all of you guys, this would not be able to happen. Hey, buddy, you want to come and say hi? I'm on a live stream. This is one of my grandkids. Say hello.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm going to be inside right now. Okay. All right. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. My son and the kids came over. So I'm going to go hang out with them for a little bit. He's 9, right? You're 9? 8. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's because his brother's 9. He's 8.
Okay. That's nice.
They're getting old quick, though. It wasn't too long ago. They were just born.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff, for posting the link up there. Thank you guys again. Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you guys haven't checked out Paul's channel, make sure you guys go give him a look. And if you like what he's doing, make sure you guys give him a sub. And look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, should do this again. Appreciate it.
All right. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.